Welcome to CacheCulture.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to the first episode in my AI Industry Impact series. So, episode 1, visual arts. So probably many of you have already tried things like DALL-E, Stable Diffusion, and this episode is going to kind of dive into how that works and what are kind of the potential impacts of this technology on industry and on jobs. It's important to start this with art has always evolved with technology. I mean, if we think about kind of the early forms of technology, cave paintings, right? That was very low technology. That was some sort of paint and ink, and then slap their hand on the wall, they have art. Okay, and then you push that down a little bit farther, and then you have paints, things like a pencil and a paintbrush, right? Where you're creating art with these physical mediums. And then you push that a little bit farther, more complex technology. You have things like the camera. All right, you take a camera, it through chemical processes that exposes light onto the film, and then you have an image. Okay, we push this even closer to today with computers, right? Things like Photoshop and Microsoft Paint, right? So these are purely digital means of art creation. Okay, and now we're moving into this kind of big revolution where we, as a human, are not actually moving the physical chemicals like with the paint or the physical pixels like with Microsoft Paint, but we're allowing an AI LLM to generate this image for us. Okay, so let's begin this discussion with how does this even work? Because it's kind of mind-boggling. Let's just zoom in a little bit to this. Boop, boop, boop. Okay, so I like this image because it shows kind of the process, right? Essentially, it goes this direction and then loops around this direction. So the way this works is it starts with an image like this. This is a cute little cat, okay? And this is an actual photograph that someone took with their camera and they put it online, okay? And then this image goes through an image encoder, right? So a person is describing, this is an orange cat with 2 big ears with a white background, and it is looking at the camera. So you add some sort of description to this. This is usually called metadata. And then what happens is this is put through a diffusion process. Okay, so what a diffusion process really means is we take this image and it's adding, this is called noise, like random static, random pixels and data. We add that to the image slowly over time, and we kind of process this change. Okay, and so what this is doing is it's essentially finding the differences between this is the real image. If I add noise, what is the result? Okay, and this is important because this is the same process to generate, just in reverse. So if I'm going to generate an image, again, you start with text, right? I write a sentence like, I want an orange cat that is looking at the camera with 2 ears. Okay, so that's my text. It goes to the text encoder, just like it did before. And again, this process here is important because we follow that in reverse. We start with completely random static. So whenever you generate an image, the first step for the AI is to create this map of random static. Okay, and then it kind of moves one pixel, moves another pixel, just like moving some paint around on a canvas. It's moving things around and seeing, okay, is this new version closer to the text than the old version? And if yes, it will continue down that process. Okay, and this continues, thousands, hundreds of thousands of times until we end up with this end image, which is obviously not the same as the original image, but it's somewhat similar based on this image encoding, the text that we put in. Okay, so that's a very quick, high-level overview of how this works. This is essentially saying the same thing, right? So it starts with this random noise, and then slowly it forms into an image. It's actually so here it's talking about, okay, you start with this image, and you're describing it. So John F. Kennedy has his puppy. Okay, so first step, a real photo, and you're describing it. And then, again, it's going to then follow that process of going from this real image and adding noise, and recording this process kind of in reverse. And then once it has that in its database, then it can start with random image, you add a prompt, and then it will then form into an image. So same thing I described before. Okay, so that was very quick. Let's move on to kind of the different types of AI. It's called Gen AI, so generative AI. So different Gen AI platforms, Flux, Midjourney, DALL-E, Stable Diffusion. They all do the same thing, but they kind of follow a different process. Okay, so what I described here is actually called Stable Diffusion, or you can see it says diffusion model. So this first type here, Stable Diffusion, just takes the name directly from that. I think actually most of these follow a very similar process. So they're probably all following the process of Stable Diffusion, but they have different names. The major difference between these are the images that were used. Let's go back up. Okay, so you have to start somewhere and you have to make this kind of database. And that's kind of the biggest difference between these two is they all have kind of different data they're using and different processes, like different ways to process that information. But if I just go to this chart here, which is pretty good, let me just actually open this up like this. You can see they all are very similar in terms of what features and metrics they have, right? So they're all, of course, generating images. You can see here that it's mentioning these different types have different kind of end results. So if you wanted an artistic, high quality image, Midjourney is probably the best. If you want something imaginative and high quality, use Dolly. Okay, so personally, I use this one the most, but all of these are able to accomplish something similar. And of course, there's differences in speed, how long it takes to generate, how user friendly it is. Okay, so for example, it says Flux is very technical, very steep learning curve, but as it says here, very high photorealistic image because you're putting in more. It's harder to use, so the end result is actually slightly better. Okay, and I'm not going to go through all of these, but they're essentially very similar. Depending on what your task is, you would use a different one. And speaking of tasks, I wanted to briefly discuss kind of why is this even important? How is this going to affect jobs? Okay, so I have two examples here of how you may use this in a job in your life. Okay, the first one is something I actually do myself, right? So this is to generate a user interface for a website. So I build websites and applications, and I use this all the time. Okay, and what this is showing here is like we said before, you have to input something. Okay, so input some sort of text and with descriptions. This one here is actually using an image and going to a final one, but I'll give you an example here, just using text. So let's go to this. This is Dolly, right? So if you have a Microsoft account, you can actually use Dolly 2 for free, which is amazing. So let's do something like this. Like, let's just say we are going to generate a website. Okay, so website UI mockup. And let's just say it's a dark mode website. Let's say it has many buttons and let's say a big video in the middle. So I have no idea what that's going to look like. Notice it takes some time, right? Before we're discussing which ones are faster, which ones are slower. I think Dolly's right in between. Excuse me. And so it's going to take about maybe 30 seconds to 1 minute, depending on how many credits you have. And then boom, the end result is something like this, right? So you may have experience using these generative AI platforms before. I just want to demonstrate one. This is, again, how you may use this in your work. Because if I design a website, I can now use this layout. I can have a big image like this. I can use these different colors. I can put the button here, etc. Okay. Another example of this is if you are, maybe you could prototype, instead of prototyping a website, you could prototype a physical thing. So in this example, it is a futuristic shoe. So here we go, futuristic footwear. You can see they've used Stable Diffusion. I'm actually just going to copy that prompt and give it a try. So let's see, futuristic footwear, and let's just say mixed electronics. Actually, let's just say futuristic footwear. So imagine I work at Nike and it's my job to design new shoes. Well, I could use image generation like this to create some ideas. So let's have a look what it generates. Usually these are actually pretty cool. There you go. So if I worked at Nike, I have this idea right here. I could do that again and again until I have a shoe that I really like. And then I can bring this to my boss and we can start making these and selling these. Actually, this shoe's pretty cool. I would wear it. All right. And then I wanted to wrap up this video with two things. Number one, kind of what are the problems here? And number two, how can you position yourself well for the future? So the first problem here is that this shoe looks amazing. And it follows this process of diffusion, like I said. But the problem here is that all of these LLMs have to start somewhere. They have to have original images in their database in order to do this process. So the question is, what was the original image, right? So for this shoe here, it may be that the original image was some sort of Nike shoe, and then it's modifying that original Nike shoe image to generate this, which is kind of questionable in terms of copyright. So that's exactly what this is talking about here. So this is Disney. I think there is an example of shoes here somewhere. Here you go. So let's have a look at this image. So what this is showing is this is the true image, and then this is what has been generated. Actually, sorry, it's the other way. This is the true image, and this is what is generated. Okay, so you can see here there's a shoe, This may be a Nike shoe, and this final image is very similar to the shoe. You can see it has the lines here, it has the straps, it has the thing on the back, so it's very, very similar. It's not exactly the same, but it's very similar. Okay, and this could be a problem because maybe these are copyrighted images, or I own this. For example, this image here, right? I own it, and then the AI is using that as a base. So questionable in terms of copyright. And this goes all the way to, right? Like, say I am Disney and I am the creator of Mickey Mouse, right? And yet now people can create Mickey Mouse in their own things, right? So I could say something like this, just as an example of this. Mickey Mouse-like figure at a birthday party, okay? I don't know what's going to happen because Mickey Mouse is copyrighted. But if we do that, I have a feeling it's going to create some sort of character that is similar to Mickey Mouse. And again, it's questionable here in terms of the copyright. So this is a battle that is currently being fought in the courts. It's happening right as we speak, trying to figure out what is AI allowed to use and what is it not allowed to use. Well, there you go. This looks exactly like Mickey Mouse, right? So obviously breaking copyright laws. Okay, so there's lots of, to be honest, some of the biggest issues here are in terms of copyright. And then just to wrap this up, I wanted to kind of cover how this may affect you, okay? So, of course, like we said, copyright is one issue, but also how is this going to affect your job is another issue. So here are a ton of different jobs in visual arts, and literally all of these are affected by generative AI. And all of the people in all of these positions need to think of some sort of contingency plan to position themselves well for the future. So let's just take a random one like this one, wildlife photographer. Okay, as a question for you, why, if I was a company and I need a photograph of a mouse, why would I pay you to go to the woods and take a photo of a mouse? That mean I have to pay for your gas and your hotel and your camera, etc. Or I just go to AI and type in photo of a mouse in the wild, and it generates this. And these images look so good these days that you probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Okay? So, just as an example, if you are a wildlife photographer, I would highly recommend learning how to use these platforms to generate these images. You save yourself time. Okay, so it's kind of a trade-off, right? Because you're saving yourself time, but also you're also devaluing your own time, because in the past you spent an hour doing it, now it spends 1 minute. Okay, and the same sort of process applies to all of these. So essentially, my advice in all these videos is going to be the same. In whatever area you're working, you need to figure out how to integrate AI into your job. And there's kind of a trade-off here because, one, you can produce more, but also at less effort, so less value. All right, so I'm just going to wrap that up there. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will have a whole series of these videos on how AI will impact the industry. And this is the first one. I hope you liked it. Please subscribe because I have only 27 followers. Very sad. I hope you subscribe so I have more than that. Thank you very much. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.